Okay, so hi and welcome to the next lecture. In this lecture, we're going to talk about UV unwrapping. Now, this is a kind of an extension of the last UV lecture I did in the last section, and I said to you I would explain how to unwrap and how to manipulate the UVs on an object. Well, this is that lecture. So just to refresh, remember what we said, what UVs were. It was like it is a mapping system to allow you to apply 2D imagery onto a 3D surface. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to unwrap, and we're going to unwrap this box to start with because it's quite straightforward, and hopefully you'll get the gist of it. When you unwrap an object, you have to unfold the surface of it onto a 2D plane, which is sometimes no easy feat. But luckily, these days, Macs and other software give you lots of nice tools to be able to do that very quickly, in fact. But there's some things you just have to tell it. So first of all, we're going to go to Modify. And you can see I've already been doing this. Just collapse this. Okay, so go to Modify up here. If you can't see, if you haven't set up your modify list here, your panel, then you'll need to go into your modify list here, and you'll look for UV map. So load in your box like this, and then click on UV map. And what that does is basically clear any seams, and I'll explain what seams are in a minute, from the model, and start with sort of a fresh canvas, if you like. And then I want you to click on, or again, if it's not in your list, I've showed you how to add it to your list. So just go to your modifier list and find unwrap UV and click on that, and that should happen basically. And you shouldn't see any green lines on this object at all. You want it fresh like that. And then you're going to scroll down the panel here, and you're going to click on Open UV Editor like that. So you got this window, and this is your UV editor. It's going to let you edit your UVs or your UVWs. UVW. You can see that down here. Although we never touch the W, like I said before. We only sort of manipulate the U and the V. Okay, so you remember I said to you before that this represents the 2D image that you're going to apply to your 3D model. Well, we don't have to necessarily do that. You never, in fact, just to be clear, you never create your textures and apply them to the model before you've applied UVs. It doesn't work that way around. You have to model it, apply your UVs, and then apply your textures, create your textures and paint it in that order. So what we can do is we can assign it a checkered pattern. So if we go in here and select, well, you've got two choices. You can do texture check, so you get this, and you can see it's all stretchy and it's not very good. So basically what it's showing you there is that that side of this model is being textured by this whole image, and that's not good. That's not what we want, but I'll show you how to fix that in a moment. Or you can go for a less noisy one and go for a checkered pattern, which is just a black and white checker box, and that's fine. Either one is fine. The aim of this is to get all these squares all over the box in equal measure, so that all the squares are the same size. They're not bendy or they're not small on this side and then big on this side and then different sizes. They're all the same. That way the texel resolution for your object will be consistent all over, and that's what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, when you unwrap a 3D object, you need to tell 3D Studio where the seams are, because if you think about unwrapping a box, you can't take that box, and peel the skin off and lay it flat on the floor without it overlapping, and it's just not you know, if you've tried to fold up a tent, you know what I mean. You know, if you got a tent and you laid all the sides, the floor and the tops and the sides out flat, you'd have to cut the seams and lay it down flat, and that's exactly what we have to do here. So the first thing we need to do is tell 3D Studio where the seams are. So let's just move this over here for a minute. You know, move it to your other screen if you've got one. If not, just minimize it. So just move it out of the way over there. So if you look down the panel here and scroll down, you'll see the seams. Inside peel, you'll see seams. What I want you to do is click on the second one along, point to point seams. Just click that. So what we're going to do is we're going to click around. So we're going to tell it to unwrap it in 2 strips of 3 squares. So we're going to have that one, and that one as one strip, and then that one, and that one as another strip. Okay, so if we start on the side here, go and just click once, you'll get this blue line and this extending dotted line. It's just waiting for you to select your next edge. Always on an edge. You can't cut across, or you can cut across, but it will just go round the edges to find where you're at. So be careful of that, because you might go the wrong way round or whatever, and it'll turn out bad. So just select the next one along and select the next one. So you've done that, and then we're going to come down here, select that. We're going to go to the bottom, select that, along there, and up there, and then right click to cancel. Right, that's all we need to do for a box. You know, it really depends on your object, and it really depends on how you want to map it. But if I was mapping this box, that's probably what I would do. You don't need to do any more than that. And then over here in the peel, the first circular icon there where it says quick peel, just click it. Sorry, I should have brought let me just undo that. Right, I'll bring this window on first so you can see what happens, and we're going to click on quick peel, and there we go. That's our UV. So what we've said now, how it's laid out at the moment, is we're saying this space on my 2D texture, and you can see the squares. It's laid out pretty decent because it's kept all the squares the same size across the image pretty much. Yeah, it's done a pretty good job. But however, you got to think about the texture that you're using and the space it's taking up, because what you don't want, look at all this space wasted here. And it depends on the size. If you're going to share this with other objects, you have to work out in advance what other objects are going to share your UV space, if any. There may not be no other objects, in which case you need to make this sure that this can fill as much space as possible. You can move this around. Down here you'll see a selection by vertex, by edge, by polygon, and by element. Select element face, and it will select the elements. If you click around, you select the elements, and you can see when they're selected what they represent on the box. You can see that follows our seams perfectly. And if I select this bottom section here, you can see the other part of the cube is highlighted. But it's not very well laid out, because I want my texels to be bigger. I want my image to use as much of this space in my texture as I can. So I can move these. So I can move this, and don't worry about where they sit within the image, because you haven't got the image yet, so it doesn't really matter. And seams, you know, if you're worried about, you know, the box is not quite good, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. This is just to give you a guide and to get the scale right throughout your object. So what I would do here, and there's several tools down here to help you manipulate the arrangement of these UVs. I mean, you've got the same up here, you've got the same controls as you've got for moving things around. They've just been, you can't do it there. You can see they're grayed out. They've been transferred to here while you're UV editing, basically. So you can, there we go. And then I can move it just like that. Still not covering, so I can select it all. So what you don't want to do, what you should never do, is select a bit of it and scale it. So look, if I scale that, I'll fit it in there, and I'll scale this other bit over here and I'll just put that in there. Don't ever do that, because you know that's when all your squares on your surface start to change size and your texels will go off sync. So when you texture your model, you'll have some blurry side and some really high density side, and you've got to be consistent throughout. So what you need to do, if you're going to move things around, select it all, and these down here will help you. You can click the rotate button. So these inside this box use these settings here. So I can click that and it will position it nicely. I can click that and it will scale it with a padding as much as it can, but keeping it within the UV space. Now that's as big as you're ever going to get that space here, because you can't scale it widthwise, because look, give you an example. If we try and do that, and I'll do it sideways so as you can see. So if I scale this up to fill that space, for example, you can see I've still got my boxes which look pretty good all down through here, and they're all the same size, but on this side they've gone out of whack. They've gone different shape, and that's bad. That means my pixels have been squashed on the horizontally, and it's because I've given it more access to the texture that's going to be applied to it. I've given it more space, but this has been, done this side. This is what we want. Max will unwrap it in such a way where it tries to keep all your UV spaces scaled correctly and relative to each other, but it's up to you to move them around. So if I undo that, you can see it goes back to being correct, and that's exactly what you want. So that's a box, pretty straightforward. I hope that's fairly clear, but like I say, just be careful, make sure all your squares are the same. I'll tell you what we'll do, close that. Now our box, in fact I'm going to save that because it's quite handy to have it saved, it might come in useful later. So I've collapsed the stack. Once it's done, collapse it so it's back to, no, we don't want it to be an editable mesh, put it back to editable poly. You can't see, but the UVs will still be on there. If I unwrap that, I open the UV editor, you can see my edges, my seams are still intact. It just keeps the information embedded into the object. So if I open the editor, you can see they're still there, so they don't go away even though you collapse the stack. So collapse that. What we're going to do is do like a donut, something a bit more complex. Now once we've done a donut, in the next lecture we're going to actually start doing some of our real objects for our scene, and some of them will get quite complicated, like a tree for example. That's quite a complex shape, but I'll show you how to do that. So let's just do a donut here. So let's create a torus. There we go. Let's just scale that down a bit. I don't know, quite that big. Okay, so that's quite a complex object really. You might think, how on earth are you going to flatten that out? Well, let's have a look. So if I apply UV map to it straight away and then unwrap it, let's have a look what it looks like. Now, unwrap, open UV editor, looks pretty good, except it's not, because it's on top of each other. If I move that, you can see it's a big old mess, and the squares, if I turn on our checker pattern, let's do the black and white one, you can see it's all over the place. It's not consistent because it's sharing UVs, it's on top of each other, and that's, can't have that either. I can't have, if I select faces, So that space, that polygon there, sharing the same space as these underneath. You know, they're all on top of each other. So that space there, and it's because I've just told it to map it straight down, so it's gone straight through and it's all on top of each other. So how do we fix that? Let's just collapse all again, just apply a new UV map, and we unwrap, and you'll see I've got no green lines anywhere. So we come around and we point to point. Let's go around, let's create a seam. And when you're doing seams, it's usually best to create them where they won't be seen. But in this case, I'm just going to go straight around the middle. Let's just do this. So I want to flatten it all out. And I would probably do this for an object like this anyway, potentially. Okay, so let's see how that works. Let's quick peel that. No, see, that's not good. It's still all mashed up. Although it's better than it was before, but that's not good. So what we need to do is we need to, because it's still one object, it's got, you know, I'm trying to make a cylinder here effectively flat just by peeling it. So let's try and do a seam on the inside. That way maybe the top and the bottom will flatten out. So let's start a new seam, say around here. Right click to finish, like that. Let's try that. Let's quick peel that. Oh, that's better. However, it's not. If we look at our checkered pattern on there, you might think that looks pretty good, but it doesn't, because in fact it's not bad. That is actually pretty good. So this square here, you've got to make sure that they're just consistently the same. See, yes, it's not bad actually. You know, if they're slightly different sizes, then it's okay. But you know, you can tell there's some bending there. Like you can see how that one comes down, that goes and then goes up there. That's not good. You don't want that because you're and see this one here that's bending. It's because of the shape of the object. We need a much more yeah, see, that's just bending there and there. That's not good. So we can take it down even further basically by creating another seam. Let's do this way around. Go all the way around here, like that. Let's do another quick peel and see what we get. See, that's much better. And what we've done, we've kind of relaxed it. Let's just move this up here, and you can see now that the squares are much better. There's no distorting on the edges here. They're still square, and that's what you need. So I would be, you know, don't worry about it not matching up on the seams, because when we come to Substance Painter, that doesn't matter, because Substance Painter fixes that. You can tell it just to work beautifully and you won't even notice that. You know, it's got some magic inside Substance which fixes seams. Obviously, you know, hard surface models have got natural edges that you would use for like a door. It's pretty flat. So each object will have its own little challenge, and you just keep adding. You know, you can just add, if you're not quite comfortable with it, you know, add another seam and then unpeel it again. And the same with this. You need to make sure that you're maximising the space, given. If this is the only object that you're going to use in here, then you need to make sure that this covers the maximum amount of space that you can use. That's not that good, is it? The more you click around, it tries to fit it, but if have a go yourself, manipulate it. I think I can see a much better fit than that. If I do something like this, already that gives me room at the top and the bottom to expand out. See, that's bigger. I think that's probably all you're going to get, to be honest. So you can move this in. You've got to be careful it doesn't go over the edge. You need a nice padding. Leave enough padding so it doesn't overlap. And you would use this space for other objects, other smaller objects for sure. So that's basic. That's the basics of UV unwrapping. There's not a lot more to it than that. It's just making sure you get your seams right, making sure you arrange your UVs correctly once they've unwrapped. Make sure you get the scaling right for all of your objects so it looks consistent all over. And don't worry about the seams too much, although if you can hide them, hide them. So if, like on a character, they would often use the inside, underneath the arm of the underneath, and under the armpit and down the sides, where you're not likely to see it so much, and just inside places where you wouldn't see, just so if you can hide them, unlike this object here, which they're all exposed pretty much, hide them basically if you can. So that's UV unwrapping. So what I'll do is leave that here, and I'll see you in the next lecture.